Okay, next I'm going to create a new layer, which is down here on the palettes menu. Create new layer, and that's going to create a layer which I can actually do my drawing on. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a bit. So there again, it's Apple Plus to zoom in. I'm just going to start kind of on her head and work counterclockwise. And what I'm going to use for this is, I've just closed these. I'm going to use the pen tool, and the pen tool's over on here. P on the keyboard, the shortcut. Now, if you notice along all these tools, some of them have got a little sort of black triangle on the bottom left-hand side, and that indicates that there's more tools or options of tools within that tool. So if I click and hold on this, it will actually open up a few different more tools that I can get access to, and that's the same with any of them that have got that little black triangle. Now, also you'll notice that it's got a kind of a bar at the edge, and this is called a tear out. And what you can do is, if you hold this bar, tear off, sorry, it allows you to tear off those tools and move them wherever you are working. And that can be really useful, as it saves you having to move the mouse, on a big monitor. Okay, so I'm going to grab that one. I'm also going to grab this one, because this is a tool we use quite a bit. I'm going to pop those both there. So first of all, I'm going to use the pen tool, which is pen tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position a few anchor points on this page. And this is going to be essentially tracing around this cutout. So I'm going to start on her nose, and you'll notice that I'm not putting too many points It's kind of quite a kind of common error is to actually place too many of these anchor points on, and what you'll find is if you place too many anchor points on, it gives you less control over the image. The less is better, and there is kind of an optimum level. Obviously, you need a certain amount, but for instance, going around the head, you don't really need more than 4 to go right around from her nose right around to the back of her head. You also notice that when I'm creating this vector shape with these anchor points, it's filling it automatically with white, which is a bit annoying because we can't actually see what we're doing. It's obscuring what we're doing. So what I need to do is I need to turn that colour off. Now, if you notice at the bottom of your tools, down here, is that there's 2 boxes, and one represents the fill, which is this one that's currently on top, which is a complete square, and then there's the stroke, which is kind of a square within a square. Now the stroke is it's turned off at the moment. The red line through it is essentially saying there's no stroke, but the stroke essentially would be a line that follows the line which I've created, and obviously the fill is the white stuff that's around it. So if I was to swap those, we'll essentially get a white line now. So a white line's fine because we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to go back to the pen tool. Going to make sure I'm on the pen tool. And I'm just going to hover over the last point I drew. And that's going to change that little icon. Rather than having an X next to the pen, which would start a new vector shape, it's going to join. So it's going to continue from where it was left off. And it's now got a little slash on it instead of an X. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on for a second. Now, I could worry about her legs. I could draw her legs in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to miss the legs out. I'm just going to undo that point, and I'm going to put the point there. And I want to come back and do the legs at a later date. So. Okay, so getting pretty close now. Okay, and you'll notice that as I join up now, the very first point I did, now it's got a little circle. I'll just turn that off. It's now got a little circle, which indicates that it's going to join and make a hole. So I'm going to do that. So, okay, so now we've got our vector shape. Let's zoom out a bit. That's Apple minus. Now, obviously, it's looking nothing like her at the moment. If I was to switch those colours back round, we can see that it's obviously not rounded, so we need to do something about that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the direct selection tool to give ourselves, turn the vectors into sort of curves. Okay, so I'm going to turn that back round again. You can do that by hitting that button there. It's a little sort of, it's a bit like the rotate button that hovers over the corner. Okay, I'm going to zoom in again, and I'm going to holding space actually turns the cursor into a hand, which enables you to move around the canvas without moving any objects. Just another one to learn. So the direct selection tool is this one here. It's like an upside down V, and I'm going to select that. And what I'm going to do is, because I drew them in a counterclockwise way, these anchor points, I'm going to work round anti-clockwise. If I work round clockwise at this point, it will give me more problems. So work in the same direction that you worked. So if you plotted the anchor points in clockwise, then work clockwise. If it's anti-clockwise, work anti-clockwise. So I'm going to grab this point and I'm just going to pull that out. Now really, the first one I'm pulling out, which is this one here, I'm not too worried about getting it exact. But what I'm more worried about is this this part here. I'm worried about getting that as exact, well, nearly exact. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to the second point, and by moving the second point we can see that it's not only affecting this part here, but it's also affecting this part here. So we can see that that's actually got much better now. This is still not quite there. But I'm going to then move on to the next anchor point, and all I'm doing is clicking my mouse, clicking and holding, and pulling the so okay, so we're getting pretty good. So really what I'm trying to achieve is I'm trying to achieve a nice curve on this side. I'm not too worried about this part here, which is this part here. I'm really worried about just this part here for the time being. I can come back and alter this. Now I'm going to move on to the next point. And okay, so there again, I'm worried about just this section here. I'm not worried about the section that goes forward, because I can come back to that. So I now can see that I need to tweak that because it's moving in. The line is inside the black, so I can grab this handle and I can just tweak that. There you go. And now I'm going to move on to this point here. I'm going to move my canvas with space. Okay. So there again, I'm kind of worried about just this section here. Now, this is swirling right out at the moment, and there's nothing we can do about that for the time being. So really, I'm just worried about just this section, almost just this little section, this half section here. And that's about as good as I can get it. Now I'm going to go back to this one here, and I'm going to maneuver that one into position. Okay, it's looking good. So that's kind of like pretty much right. So now I'm going to move on further down her back. Use space again. Now, in this instance, I'm not worried about this back section. I'm worried about this section here because I know that I can't correct that yet. So let's just zero that again. As by pulling out, I know I can't sort the top section out because this one is pulled right out. So I'm going to have to concentrate on the bottom section first and then come back to that top section. So okay, so that's looking pretty good. But like I said, this bit is completely out. So now if I grab this part, I can alter that top part of the back, which makes it it's making it look quite easy. Okay. So I'm now going to move on down to the bottom of her dress. Now, I don't really need to change the line along here, along this top section, because that's pretty good. So I don't really want to move this too far. So what I'm doing is, if I want to zero a point, I can just click on it. So I'm just going to move it a tiny bit, and then I'm going to grab that second handle and move that. Also going to go on to the next one. Now again, I don't want to move this one too much, but I do want to move that bit. So it's a case of kind of working around these one by one. Now you want to kind of, sometimes there's a temptation to leave some of the points, like don't touch them at all. But what you'll find is that it kind of gives you a very geometric shape, and you know, you sometimes want to kind of just put a little curve in the line just to make it look as if someone's actually thought about it. Otherwise, it just looks a bit too computer. Now I can't really see what's going on here, so I can Apple's plus again, and I can move in much closer. Okay, so I can see that this point here is actually not directly on the line, and actually there's a problem with this bit, this point over here, this one over here, and that one over there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the white arrow tool, which is the direct selection tool, and that's going to enable me. You know how the black arrow picks up a whole object? The white arrow allows me to pick up just a part of an object, and in this instance I want to pick up just that anchor point. So by hovering over it, it's going to allow me to move that anchor point. I'm going to move that one as well. I'm also going to grab this corner one. That's looking good. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Convert Anchor Point tool. I'm going to zoom back out because it's probably a bit too zoomed in now. And I'm going to move on to this next point. And it's a case of just going through this one at a time. Oh, just missed it. There you go. I'm just going to pull that one up. Okay, so we're getting pretty close now. Can't see quite ahead. I'm going to move that up again. Oh, cancel that. Cancel that. Okay, so that's us pretty much done. So let's going to zoom out.